A warm welcome to Miss Lindsey Ow. Miss Lindsey, your insights will be invaluable to our listeners today. Few words about Miss Lindsey. Miss Lindsey is a STEM educator. She has earned international recognition for promoting intentional cross-curricular projects. Miss Lindsey is now supporting School 21, and her topic is implementing STEM in schools. Over to you, Miss Lindsey.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rana. Hello to everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with colleagues in Saudi Arabia. It was so exciting to hear the earlier presenters. As a kind of classroom-focused teacher, I always get very, very excited when I have a chance to hear presentations about the higher level. So like Ms. Elham, hearing about the future jobs research and why STEM is so important for leading towards that was really exciting. So I'm invigorated having gotten to listen to all of your presentations. So I am here today to talk about the School 21 STEM resource books, like Mr. Syed mentioned, and thinking about from a pedagogical standpoint, how would one implement a STEM program in a school, in their classroom? Go ahead, please, Ms. Aya. So Ms. Rania mentioned, I took some notes here as my colleagues were presenting. Ms. Rania also defined STEM for us. She, laid out science, technology, engineering, and math. What does that mean? And then there was in her notes a really beautiful phrase that I loved. She said that the important thing of STEM is that it's a cohesive learning paradigm. And I love that phrasing because it's so true that we can't just talk about science over here and then engineering over here and call that STEM. It has to be a cohesive program where it's all coming together. And so I also listed these other words that are central to making a cohesive program for STEM. So besides science, technology, engineering, and math, students also need to learn design. They need to practice creativity. Creativity is a skill that can be learned and can be grown. Many people believe they're either creative or they're not, but that's not the case. They need to learn problem solving, collaboration. My favorite one on this list is agency. The sense that someone can have an impact on their environment, that they can have an impact on their own life. I so often see children and adults who believe that they have no sense of their own agency. And a critical aspect of STEM is that by learning how to problem solve, learning how to address challenges, children also develop a sense of agency, which is critical if they're going to go forward into those careers that Ms. Elham was talking about that are going to solve the problems facing society today. Go ahead, please, Ms. Aya. So there's a quote that is not directly, a STEM education quote, but Albert Einstein said, and it's paraphrased, "We can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And he said this 100 years ago, and it was the case then, and it's still the case now. The Sustainable Development Goals are wonderful because they're really addressing our current problems. They're saying, here's what we need to accomplish. But in order to solve those problems, we can't be trying to address them in the same thinking patterns that we've been using for hundreds of years, but especially the past 200-ish. So one of the critical things with STEM is that we have to get a new way of thinking. That's actually perfect, Messiah. That's great. Next slide. So coming back to that quote, the engineering design process is a new way of thinking that the STEM concept, the STEM paradigm develops in students. So students will, in executing an excellent STEM program in a school, they will develop their own sense of the engineering design process. They'll learn how to define a problem. They'll learn how to brainstorm solutions. They'll learn how to prototype. So they'll have, the soft skills like others have been talking about in terms of understanding a problem, having empathy for someone who has a need, as well as those concrete, more technological pieces like building and prototyping and testing. So the full engineering design process taking all of the pieces of STEM into account is how we are going to address Einstein's quote here of creating a new way of thinking, developing a new way of thinking that will allow us to solve the problems facing society today, or will allow our kids as they grow up to solve those problems. Go ahead, Messiah. So the School 21 program is, first point, curricular aligned internationally. So the Next Generation Science Standards, the National Curriculum of England, a lot of the internationally applied standards, they are aligned within the School 21 program. Slow down, Messiah. And actually, it's okay for the next slide. Thank you. So besides having those direct the standards, and so the organization of, you need to teach botany, you need to teach systematic thinking in mathematics, you need to teach coding. Those are the standards, but we're also giving the students genuine age-appropriate problems to solve. So we want them to solve problems in the future, in their careers. We also want them to be problem solving now. If we're just feeding them information until they're adults, they're going to be adults who can take in information, but not adults who can solve problems. So we start from the very youngest ages, preschool, kindergarten, giving them age-appropriate problems to solve so that they can develop those skills and they can develop that agency, that belief that they can make a difference in their world. Go ahead, Messiah. And so the School 21 programs are set up to guide students through the engineering design process. So these are some screenshots of a couple pages from one of the textbooks. And in addition to, at the beginning, it sets up a problem, it gives the children a story, something that they need to solve. And then the workbook guides the students through it. There's a place for them to brainstorm. There's a place for them to prototype. There's a place for them to record their findings and their tests when they test their prototypes. And then perhaps most critically, there's an built-in reflecting and communicating at the end. Students share their results. They reflect on how effective their results were. They reflect on how successful they felt. And so they're building those soft skills while also developing those problem solving, those concrete scientific skills. So the way that the units are organized, and I loved something Dr. Mosso said about this, and so I'll come back to that. But the way that the School 21 program is organized is it follows the trajectory of technology development in human history. So it starts from the earliest technology that first let us form civilizations, basic structures of civilization, bridges, towers, and then it builds from there to simple machines, to motors. And so I was really excited earlier when Dr. Mosa said that technology is everything human, and also technology is using scientific knowledge to create tools and systems and solutions. And technology is not just coding. It's not just building a robot, which many people, that's the first thing they think of when they think of STEM. It's also building a bridge, and it's also building, a windmill, building simpler things that come before the AI. Yes, the AI is important. All those other pieces are important too. The kids have to build their mechanical skills. They have to build their, civil engineering, construction skills. And the School 21 program is set up to lead students from the earliest ages, the earliest, human social technology, all the way up to, in the oldest grades, in 9th and 10th grade, even getting into Raspberry Pi and more advanced coding. So from the beginning of human society to today. Go on to the next one, Ms. Aya. So Syed shared at the beginning a list of some FAQs, some common FAQs that School 21 gets when we present the program. And so the biggest one is, how do we implement this? How do we implement a STEM program? And I see two pieces to the answer to that. One is the logistical. As a classroom teacher, I recognize the logistics are important. If I can't figure out how to squeeze this lesson into my 45-minute period before my kids have to go out to lunch, then I can't do it. So the logistics are critical. And then the other piece is um, the atmosphere that we need to develop for this to work, the classroom community, what it needs to look like in order for kids to develop that agency. And so first bullet point there, the logistics. Student workbooks and kits provide everything that they need. The teachers are not going to have to go out and find other materials and cobble together their projects. The kits have everything they need. Also, there's a teacher guide with the lesson plan, and there's training, of course. So logistically, it's set up to support schools for success. And then that other piece is the teacher scaffolded with the materials that we give them. The teacher has to build a culture of collaboration in their classroom. They have to build enthusiasm for challenge, that kids want a challenge. They crave something hard. I have gotten into arguments with other teachers where I tell kids, okay, guys, this is going to be hard, but we can do it. And I've had colleagues say, you can't tell them it's hard, then they won't do it. You need to tell them it's easy. I'm like, no, we want to solve hard problems. And so that's always my goal, is enthusiasm for a challenge and developing that student agency. The projects are set up to take 30 to 45-minute class periods, usually 3 class periods. And then back to that conceptual piece, the brainstorming and reflection at the beginning, the brainstorming at the beginning, the reflection at the end, it's just as important as the building in the middle. That's one of the hardest pieces we have with training for School 21, as well as for trainings that I've done all over the world with other programs as well. Everybody wants to get right to the building. And if we just do the building, we're not doing the cohesive learning paradigm. I was checking my notes because I couldn't remember the exact wording. We're not doing the cohesive learning paradigm if we're only doing the building. And so the teacher has to really absorb that idea that the brainstorming at the beginning and the reflection at the end, and then all that communication and resilience in the middle, that's all just as important as screwing together your toys and building a bridge. So I also have a couple other notes here from the other FAQs that Mr. Syed mentioned. You know, someone had asked, is it aligned with NGSS? Yes, of course. And then this question that I love is, who is the best teacher to teach STEM? And I think often people think, okay, we need to make sure it's someone who's super comfortable with math. We need to make sure it's someone who already knows how to do coding. And I would say, no, that's not the best person. The best person is the teacher who's really excited to try new things and who's really comfortable not having all the answers, because these problems that we're giving to students don't have one right answer. And so if a student tries something a new way that you hadn't thought of, as the adult, you have to be comfortable saying, oh, that's not what I thought was going to happen. And sometimes teachers get really anxious about that. So best teacher to implement STEM is going to be someone who's comfortable not having all the answers, and someone who really believes that students can develop their independence, that student independence is a real thing that is possible, even among the 5-year-olds. So that's my answer to that question. There's also a question about, back to the logistics, the techie part, what online materials are available. School 21 is developing an online portal that's going to have introduction videos, digital versions of the lessons, those kind of logistical pieces that help implement in the classroom. And then where do robotics and coding come in? I just gave a whole spiel about how like building bridges and building a windmill are super important. But yes, you know, like Ms. Elham talked about, we also need the coding and we also need the AI. And so coding starts in 5th grade with Lego We Do, and we're developing an option for using microbit. 6th through 8th grade have Arduino, they have app development, they have game development, they get into some real nitty-gritty coding. And then in 9th and 10th grade, they get into Python and Raspberry Pis, like professionally used programs. And then the last question that I had in the notes was the estimated time for teachers to be ready for teaching STEM. And I think that's such an interesting question because it's both logistical and conceptual. Because what does it mean to be ready to teach STEM? It doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It doesn't mean that you know exactly how this is all going to go. It means that you are comfortable with you're comfortable not having the answers, and you know enough about the kit that you can handle the weird questions that kids come up with, but you don't need to be perfect. And so I would say 2 to 3 dedicated hours for a teacher to really have fun with the kit, practice using it, practice building the students' projects. But it doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers going into it. And of course, there is individual school training available, whole teacher training, as well as training to support grade by grade. And I think I'm right at my time limit. So I would love if folks have other questions, they can follow up after the session. And if people want to hear more about what the training looks like, we welcome those questions as well. Thank you so much. Back to you, Ms. Rana.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsey. Your presentation was both very informative and engaging.